Hello, I'm Tim Anderson, Executive Director of the BC Retired Teachers Association and editor of PostScript magazine, and it's my pleasure once again to bring to you the PostScript Excellence Awards for the year 2023. We're celebrating another great year of PostScript with issues from the summer of 2022 through spring of 2023. And our first category is Best Art or Photograph. And let's go through those nominees now. Hinda Bela and the Rosen Woman by Hinda Avery. A cover and photo series by Penny Pitcher. Bangkok Cartoons by Duncan Morris. Mushrooms by Rheta Steer with Songsi Unjit. And a painting by Len Shane. I had the pleasure of interviewing our winner and informing them that they had won. And so let's look at that video now. Well, I'm very pleased to welcome to our broadcast Rheta Steer, who is a finalist in the PostScript Excellence Awards for Best Artwork or Photo. Welcome, Rheta.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. Finally meet you.
It's really great to be able to talk to you, Rheta. Now, the very first thing we have to do is take care of some business. When I let you know that you were a finalist for this award, your first reaction was, hold on, if you're going to credit me with these photos, I want to make sure that the name of my collaborator on this project is front and center, because you have worked on this project with someone important in your life.
That's right. My daughter-in-law, who was born and raised and educated in Thailand, and since she's come to Victoria and the island, she has really taken an interest in mushroom and mushroom foraging. She knew some about it in Thailand. A surprise to me that they do have mushrooms in Thailand, and they use them. Not quite the way we do. They use them more medicinally, but they do eat them in their food. But they don't usually fry them up with onions the way we tend to do. So she has really got into that. In fact, today, as I speak with you, she's out foraging. Right now, apparently, is a good time.
I guess one of the first questions that people will ask when they see all these very dramatic photos is they're going to say, can you actually eat a lot of those things?
Yes. As far as, well, there's a few of them she couldn't identify, so she couldn't say that they're edible, but most of the others are, and she explained to me that she just dries, some she dries and grinds into powder, and they put that in a coffee mocha type drink, like a cup of coffee, but it's got this medicinal mushroom in it, and that's the chanterelles, ones common to us, the lobster and the pine mushrooms. Then there are others that she dries and chops them up, and then puts them in a tea drink, creates more of a tea drink with them. And that's the one she calls chicken of the woods, and another one is the reishi mushroom. But pretty well all those that she could identify in here are edible, and they are out there here on Vancouver Island, probably elsewhere in the province, if you know where and when to go and look for them.
I guess a good word of advice then is always don't try this at home before you know what it is that you're eating.
Oh, exactly. And she has taken courses here on in Victoria. There is a support group, a group that meets regularly, and they're very, very cautious about that, as is she. She focuses on a few particular varieties, but on her way to looking for those, she finds and sees these other wonderful, beautiful specimen that she records. And I think, as I mentioned to you earlier, I would go with her mainly because I wasn't comfortable with her being out there in the forest alone. So I would go with a big stick and, and with as an extra pair of eyes in case of any troubles. And between the two of us, with her cell phone camera, that's all we used. We got these pictures because they are beautiful. I was just thrilled with the results in the PostScript magazine. How clear and sharp the colors are.
Well, we certainly didn't doctor anything to make it look like it didn't in the first place, but we did make some color corrections to show
Yep.
what it would look like if it was seen with your naked eye, for sure. The judges have actually rendered their decision, and the winner of the PostScript Excellence Award for Best Art or Photo is your team of you and Song Yi, winner of the PostScript Excellence Award for this year. Congratulations.
Well, fantastic, Tim, fantastic. I didn't even know there was a competition, but oh, that she will be thrilled. She'll be excited. I had hoped that she could maybe be here and participate, but as I say, she had had already made arrangements with her friends. They're out there foraging today. So, but she'll be excited and thrilled. Yes, thank you.
Our next category is Best Travel Article. And our nominees are Senior Hosteling in Ireland by Kay Kennedy, I Rented an Old Man by Lynda Grace Philippsen, Desert Encounter by Ruth Stewart, Best Field Trip Ever by Marion Dodds, Invitation to a Voyage by Tim Brownlow, and The Spirit of Haida Gwaii by Brenda Deneen. I contacted our winner and let them know, and here's that interview right now. Hello, Lynda.
Hi, nice to see you again.
It's great to see you. Wonderful to have you earlier on in our writer's workshop as a special guest, and great to welcome you back now as we talk about this rather dynamic travel article, I Rented an Old Man. Now, I think with a provocative title like that, we have to set the scene a little bit. This is one in a series of articles you've done about your travel to Japan and your encounter with that culture.
Right, yeah. I was studying Ikebana at the Sogetsu School of Ikebana in Tokyo beside the Canadian Embassy, for those of you who know the city. And while I was there, Tokyo is basically your living room. I had a little apartment that is the size of my bedroom back home that included everything, 300 square feet. And so it becomes the place where, you go out. You don't actually live in it the way I live in my living room at home. So this is part of any number of adventures on any given day.
And here we see this imperious hand reaching over to grab this unsuspecting Japanese gentleman who has a price tag on him. And the title is I Rented an Old Man. What is the purpose of renting an old man?
Well, for me, it was to get me into an atmosphere or into a venue in which I would not be comfortable. I'd had a number of music related experiences in the city at the time, but I'd never really explored any of the little hole in the wall kind of jazz music kind of opportunities, sometimes a little bar with maybe 20 seats. And because I don't speak Japanese or read Japanese, I'm not too comfortable 10 o'clock at night walking into an atmosphere like that solo. And, not knowing what I'm going to hear. You have to pay some kind of cover charge. You have to have drinks. I didn't really want to waste my time. So Japan has a rental culture. We don't have that here. Any of our rentals are somewhat nefarious. We don't kind of put that in the mainstream in terms of, unless you're hiring a cleaning lady or hiring, window washers. It's that kind of thing. It's not as personal, whereas this is personal. You can actually hire someone to make an apology for you or do some other thing that you don't like. For example, and I mentioned this in the article, if, let's say, your parents are hounding you about not being engaged and getting married, you can rent a fake fiance and, bring him home for a couple of years. And then say, oh, we broke up. I discovered he was cheating, whatever. You make up a story and get your folks off your back. Now, that to us is completely foreign. So anyway,
by the time you're pretending that you've been married, by the time you pretend you've been married for 10 years, that's going to be a fairly expensive proposition, I imagine.
Well, it's only about $15 an hour, so it's not that bad, and you don't have that many holidays to go visit your folks. And, the Japanese people are working all the time. They'll understand, we can't leave the company, So anyway, there is that opportunity.
It's cheaper than a spouse.
Exactly.
One other thing that struck me, Lynda, was that the definition of old man seemed somewhat flexible. It turns out your old man was all of 49 years old.
Right.
And here he is. You're calling him Nagi-san here.
Yeah,
Nagi-san turned out to be something of a kind soul.
Well, he was young and he presented very young. I mean, I don't call people in their 40s old. That's, and I have a beef with ageism anyway. And I even fall into that in the article and even just some of the language that I use about age and so on. But yeah, he was an unemployed person who had been out of the country for a long time and was reestablishing himself, looking for work, finding it hard. But because he was fluent in Chinese and English and so on, and he had international guide experience, he basically had to pay a fee to join the company, and then they would set him up with clients. So it was, income in addition to other, he was basically working what he could get. He's like a jobbing actor, really. So that was his situation.
One of the things that I love about your articles, Lynda, is the way you layer in image after image to pick a theme and build it up and create some resonances. And one of the things you do here is talking about one of the small restaurants that you visit that's run by some very elderly people. And so on this theme of age and usefulness, you paint in this lovely picture of these folks who were very old. And I think in your article you said multiple times, I felt like I should get up and be helping them because they were that aged.
Yeah, I said that I felt that we should be caring for them. You know how grandkids are. They go over to their grandparents, and I did this myself. I was, I guess, in my 30s, and I'd go to my grandparents who were in their 80s, and they would cook for me, and they would, welcome me, because that's what you do with your grandchildren. You fuss over them. But in this situation, it's hard to judge people's age, but I would have put them in their late 70s, early 80s. This couple, the man was cooking and the wife was serving. And I just felt like I should be getting up and saying, no, you sit down and let us bring you the food, and say, and there we are. I mean, they were very spry and so forth. But again, here we are looking at these ageist tropes and thinking someone is, more infirm than they are because of the way we present and the way we have been taught to view age.
It's one of the beautiful things about your writing in general, and particularly in this article, is that you have a kind of playfulness, an irreverence with certain things where you transgress certain boundaries very consciously, but then also take some accountability for that and reflect on it. So you play with that in the I Rented an Old Man. It's kind of comical, but you at the same time hold yourself to think about what it is to deal with people in a sense of utility and just using them. And that sensitivity, I think, is something that makes this article very special.
Yes, and I think because I'm a white woman, I have a certain level of privilege, and I'm kind of aware of that. I don't want to transgress in that way. For example, I will not ride in a rickshaw, even though it's part of the tourism in Japan. I just can't. It just feels wrong to me. So I always try to be very sensitive to the fact that other cultures are different. Perceptions of me in that culture are different. I represent Canada when I am traveling somewhere. I'm not just myself. And I do have, concerns about those kinds of things. And still, you could also rent a girlfriend in Japan, and that could be a young person to, act as your sister or, do some other role outside of our own culture. It doesn't have the same connotation as it would here. So again, it's coming up against those differences and then dealing with them and trying to feel comfortable, trying to be part of the culture, trying to enjoy the experience, but also being sensitive to how wrong that can be. It's a fine line. It's a fine dance. On my way back to my apartment, passing my quiet neighbors in Aoyama Cemetery, and gazing across the towers of Roppongi, I'm reminded of the numerous other Ichigo Ichie, or once-in-a-lifetime encounters with individuals like Nagi-san during my months in Tokyo. Repeatedly, in serendipitous ways, paths intersect and moments we share often surprise with genuine and even profound connection. That, despite a careless thought at the outset, that it might prove a lark to rent an old man.
But you did make some connections you did make some powerful connections with people over there that mean a lot to you.
And it's surprising how often that happens, so randomly and in different ways. I spent a lot of years, writing a blog about some of these things, and that stuff's still there if anybody wants to go and read it. But it was a very, very interesting journey for sure.
Well, before I let you go, we should mention your blog. It's thewayofwords.com. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thewayofwords.com. And then I also post to Instagram at Lynda Wow, WOW for Way of Words, not World of Warcraft or any other wow.
Well, we'll share those links with people.
Sure. Okay, that's great.
Well, I should also tell you before we sign off here that our committee, the communications committee that does the voting for these awards, has actually entered their verdict. And I'm very happy to tell you that, in fact, Lynda, you are the winner of the PostScript Excellence Award for Best Travel Article. So congratulations.
Oh, thanks so much. I'm really sorry we can't do this in person and eat rubber chicken. Yeah. I haven't been off the island since 2020, so I was really looking forward to being in a large group and that. So applause would have been
Well,
nice.
there it is. The communications committee did vote you off the island, so to speak. It's too bad that you weren't able to be there in person, but we'll rectify that, I hope, in the future.
Oh, that's really lovely. You've made my day. Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Lynda. The final category we're presenting today is the Sheila Gare Award for the Best Personal Experience Article. And our nominees are Dancing in Small Spaces by Leslie Davidson, Independence by Patty Lefkos, Retire and Rewire by Gary Litke, The Principle of Parking by Chris Harker, Memories of Zabalos by Stephanie Koropatnik, and My North by Helen McGull. And here's the interview with our winner. So I'm pleased to welcome to our broadcast today Leslie Davidson, author of Dancing in Small Spaces, which appeared in PostScript and is a finalist for the Article of the Year Award. Welcome, Leslie.
It's lovely to be here. Thank you, Tim.
Now, your article, Dancing in Small Spaces, was extracts from your book of the same name, and it covers a period in your life that was dramatic, I guess would be a even way of putting it. Maybe you could describe a little bit of the circumstance that led you to write that book.
Okay. Well, in 2011, my husband and I were both retired teachers. Lincoln was a librarian. I was a primary teacher mostly. And he had been retired for 3 years. It was I had been retired for 3 years. It was my third year in retirement, his fifth. And I started to experience some symptoms that I could only think were neurological, dragging foot and some unsteadiness on my feet. And it turned out that I had Parkinson's disease. We found that out quite quickly. And at the same time, we were dealing with some cognitive issues with Lincoln. And shortly after my diagnosis, his diagnosis came in that he had some form of dementia, probably Alzheimer's at the time. It turned out to be Lewy body dementia in the end, but very, very hard to distinguish between dementias in the early stages. So that happened within a four-month period, those two diagnoses, though we had been symptomatic, both of us, for longer than that. And it was about figuring out how to negotiate our way through retirement with these big things happening. We had to get on. We had to get up every day, and we had to eat and do laundry and stay healthy. And so we just kind of walked through it until we both realized that we were so supported, that we had such good people in our lives, that this really was going to be okay. For the time being, it was going to be okay. Yeah.
Now, when you and I were working on our presentation of this article, I talked to you about the challenge I felt from the editor's point of view of putting this in front of people, because I think the way we put it was your writing style was associative, not linear.
Yes.
You gathered bunches of images and senses around little anecdotes and stitched them together very poetically. Is that the way you always write, or is that the only way you could write about this incident?
It was the only way I could write about this one, Tim. I didn't know I was writing a book until I was well into the process, or to talk about Lincoln in front of him. It was of course very hurtful for him and confusing. So I put everything down in writing that I thought people needed to know. And I also put down what I needed to express. Sometimes my sadness, sometimes how funny it was. And so I had this collection of emails, and I had written articles for an online magazine out of England, written and edited entirely by people with Parkinson's. And I had some journal entries, and I had lots of photographs, and COVID came, and it seemed a good thing to do. Once I started to frame things, to make them accessible for other people, and to be quite honest, Tim, to present myself as the person I wanted to be, rather than maybe the person I was all the time, and that changed me. It focusing on gratitude and focusing on the joy that we were still able to experience, and knowing that those were the stories that would give heart to people who loved him.
What I hear you saying is, what I hear you saying is, you weren't writing because you had it all sorted out and you understood. You were writing to help you understand and to process.
To process, exactly. And it was very, and it did that. It absolutely did that. There often I would write something down and discover at the end that I understood. I understood how important it was to ask for help, for example. I found that very, very difficult. I still find it difficult, but writing about it I could look at it and say, oh, that's just silly. That's something around ego and pride, and you need it, ask for it, because all these people are waiting to give it.
There's a very beautiful segment of that article that describes you going to the grocery store with Lincoln and your experience there, and seeing how the community responds to him. Can you talk about that?
Well, he was a very loved man in Grand Forks. He was a character. He was iconoclastic. He was a beloved librarian, just gentle guy. And when we went to and Lincoln did all the grocery shopping, I always laugh because the big three for couples to fight about are money, chores, money, chores, and childcare, I think. And we never fought. We fought, but we didn't fight about those things. And Lincoln did more than his share of stuff around the house. I'm, as you said, not very linear, and he was very linear. So he always had his lists and knew what the next job was. And I was, making Play-Doh on the stove and reading to a kid and talking to my colleague about a project, and all at the same time. And when I started having to go to the grocery store with him because he wasn't able to go by himself anymore, I realized what relationships he had developed. It was lovely. Particularly the manager of the produce department in our overweighty greeted him with a hug. The cashiers helped him with his debit card. They would put the numbers in. They knew his PIN. And there were students that he had taught, and that was particularly lovely to run across a kid who would talk to him and then look at me and say, Mr. Ford always had a book for me, and I went into the library, and because I was upset, he wouldn't make a fuss. He would just let me be and ask me if I was okay, and that would be it.
Our society is so geared up for accomplishment and strength and being good looking and vigorous and independent. and all these messages we get, you're strong and you believe in yourself. And there comes a time in life for all of us, whatever the circumstances are, where we could really use some help. And you touched on that briefly, that this is a great internal struggle. I think many people in retirement have to go through some of those conversations with themselves. What have you learned about life and what life is about through being confronted with some of these vulnerabilities?
Oh boy. I guess I've learned that acceptance is a real thing. I say at some point in the book, I say I don't even know what acceptance means, and I didn't at the time that I wrote that piece. But I have stopped chafing at the limits, at the fact that my world has become very small. Our world together became very small when it had been huge. We were traveling the world literally, and being impulsive and doing things on the spur of the moment and reveling in our children's successes and visiting them, and then that all changed, and it's it's very easy to feel very sorry for yourself and to sink into sadness and despair, but that's such an uncomfortable place to live. And I'd been happy. I'd been a very blessed, fortunate person. And I was used to liking my life and feeling gratitude for it. And I needed to find a way to get back to that.
So in that moment of sadness, suddenly you become aware of this poem. And I'm wondering if you could read it for us, and then we'll talk about why it meant what it did.
Look for me in the people I've known or loved, and if you cannot give me away, at least let me live in your eyes and not in your mind. You can love me best by letting hands touch hands, and by letting go of children that need to be free. Love doesn't die, people do. So when all that's left of me is love, give me away. I've been very, very, very gratified by the letters and the emails that have come from people I don't know. You expect your friends and family to be kind, but I have a file that's quite, maybe 30, 40 handwritten, typed and emailed letters saying, thanks for this. It helped. And people telling their own stories, which I've really, really liked.
Before I let you go, I should give you some insight into the voting process for these awards. You wrote this article without an eye to win awards, I don't think. You were just sharing your story. But one of the things our magazine does is we really want to celebrate the examples of great writing that our members give, as a way of celebrating the whole process of sharing these stories, as you talk about. So interesting thing happened this year. Our communications committee votes on these awards, and they have ranked votes. But this year, unusually, all of them independently, working from home, put in their votes, and each person unanimously voted for one article to be the best article. And Leslie Davidson, your article, Dancing in Small Spaces, is the PostScript Excellence winner. Congratulations.
Thank you. It's lovely. That's really lovely, Tim. Thank you. And so I'm so grateful for for being able to share it through that, through PostScript, that lovely letter from the woman who was dancing with her husband. made it so worthwhile. And you've been so kind and helpful. I really appreciate it. But thank you. I feel very, very honored and touched.